Greetings, everyone, and welcome to America in Focus, powered by the Center Square. I'm Dan McCaleb, Chief Content Officer at Franklin News Foundation, publisher of the Center Square Newswire service. We are recording this on Friday, October 18th. Another week gone and another week closer to the November 5th general presidential election. Vice President Kamala Harris participated in a contentious interview with Fox News. Former President Donald Trump seems to have gained some momentum in some key swing states, but the race overall remains incredibly tight. Joining me to discuss this and other developments in the presidential race is Casey Harper, Washington, D.C. Bureau Chief for the Center Square. Casey, let's start with the Harris interview with Fox News host Bret Baier. What are your top takeaways?
I mean, this was a kind of a remarkable interview. I was amazed that she did it because for the most part, she sort of adopted Biden's, strategy of hiding away and letting the media do your work for you. It worked for Biden. I mean, of course, he did a few interviews, but he mostly just stayed on the campaign trail and avoided the media. And even though he avoided them, they still kind of covered for him. I mean, conservatives pejoratively, refer to it as hiding in his basement, right? But if you want to call it that, Kamala's tried the basement approach. Of course, she's on the campaign trail and doing a lot of events. So anyway, I thought it was interesting that of all things to choose, she's here with Bret Baier, who can be known. I mean, he was really tough on Trump in that interview. And of course, Fox is right-leaning and Harris went in. So, I think the benefit of that for her was that there was low expectations. And once people went into that interview knowing, wow, this is going to be rough. So I think the fact that she didn't totally bomb it helped her. She took a lot of tough questions and at times really struggled to answer those questions. But when you see how tough the interviewer is being to her, you kind of have a little bit of sympathy. However, I don't think she won a lot of people over with this. And in fact, had a couple of very embarrassing viral moments. In particular, when Bret Baier is asking her, you say you're going to turn the country around, but 79% in the poll they refer to, 79% of Americans say the country's headed on the wrong track. And you've been in office 3.5 years. So if they say it's on the wrong track, you say you're going to turn the page, but you're already in office, which is a point that Trump tried to make the last debate, I think mostly unsuccessfully, but Bret really put it in her face and she totally had no answer. I mean, it was painful to watch and how she kind of tried to laugh it off and said, well, Trump's been running for office. And Bret said, you in office, you're in the White House. What are you talking? She says, you and I both know what we're talking about here, Bret. And he said, I really don't know what you're talking about. I'm confused. And that was a really painful, awkward moment that really brought attention to the fact that, hey, they're one of Trump's biggest arguments in the debate, which I think he really failed to get across in that debate, which is, how are you making all these big promises if you're the VP? And everyone knows that Biden has lost a step, to say the least, and you could probably get, things done since, you always call it the Biden-Harris administration. So why haven't you? It's the best argument against an incumbent. If you were going to do all these changes, why didn't you already do it? That was what cost Trump, I think, in big part. Of course, COVID really was what cost him. But it's what cost Trump when he ran for re-election against Biden. All of his things that he said he was going to do, it's, well, you've been in office 4 years and you haven't done it, right? So that's what I took away from that. I think that there's been some really interesting polling coming out. The interview, I think, was mostly a swing and a miss, and it really just highlights. I mean, I admire her for trying it, and I think it was the right thing to do to try it. Maybe not Bret Baier. I mean, she kind of maybe overcompensated for the lack of interviews by picking a hard one. She should have just went more mainstream, a little bit more favorable, I think. But I want to
one more thing with the Fox News interview. Bret Baier also pressed her on the border crisis, asked her directly, how many foreign nationals have crossed the border since you and Biden took office? He name dropped Laken Riley and a couple of other women who were murdered at the hands of foreign nationals illegally in the U.S., released into the U.S. by the Biden administration, and asked her directly, do you owe them an apology? And while she sort of, hemmed and hawed and said what a tragedy that is, and et cetera, she wouldn't answer the question about whether she should apologize. She didn't answer the question about how many millions of foreign nationals have entered the country legally or illegally since she came into office. So I don't think she looked real good there either.
No, I mean, and that's, the Republican response to Harris's strength with women is trying to make the immigration an issue that, hits home with women. It makes it a safety issue versus a cultural change issue, which a lot of social conservatives tend to focus on. But if you make it a public safety issue, I think that is kind of smarter. And that's what Brett was getting at. And she has no answer on it. I mean, Brett also asked her, or, actually Charlemagne the God, it was a different interview. He asked her, why did you let Joe Biden call you the border czar all these years or all that time if you weren't actually the border czar? And she had some kind of answer like, if I corrected people every time they said something about me, I'd be so busy. But I don't think that really passed muster. And the comments on that interview kind of seemed to reveal that. And Charlemagne is not conservative at all. So I think that Harris had a lot of momentum getting the nomination, did very well in the debate against Trump, and has slowly been sliding since then. And these interviews are not helping. I think they're making it worse. But the problem is when she's not doing the interviews, she gets attacked for hiding in her, Biden-style basement. And so she's in a tough place. And I think she's just trying to white knuckle it to Election Day and hope that the momentum does not keep slipping and put Trump ahead. But I think right now, Trump is in a really good position. He's doing well in these swing states. He's got the momentum on his side. He's doing a lot of big, just major podcast interviews. Patrick Bet-Davis, Flagrant, and others. These are appealing to younger voters. These are not your traditional news outlets, but they often get more views than those traditional news outlets because of the modern media landscape. And I've been, making my way through these interviews, and he seems very reasonable. He seems peaceful. He's not the angry Nazi fascist tyrant that the left tries to characterize him as. It's not rally Trump at these things either. It's a very calm, soft-spoken Trump doing these. And he's often kind of making jokes and things. So I think these interviews are really helping Trump. They're hurting Harris. And we've seen some polling, Dan, before I toss it back to you, that shows that Harris doesn't quite have the support from black voters that she may need in these swing states.
Well, Casey, we're just about 2.5 weeks away from Election Day. For our listeners, if early voting has started in your states, obviously vote. That's the most important thing. Thank you for joining us today, Casey. Listeners can keep up with this story and more at thecentersquare.com.